Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, no, I mean, I thought it was genuine that, yeah, with decent group of one for council, right now. I think there's more fun here about it. I like the school board member. It's like that's so good. We're not getting. Well, of course, we either believe that it's a system or whatever. It's like it used to be seen as like, oh, this is something that there's a lot of jump to whatever. And now I'm like, that's like, yeah, no, I'm not saying the people there are bad. You know, the dancing's there or whatever, but, you know, I mean, yeah, I'm saying the wrong way. But, you know, yeah, right. Right, but the school board was just not good. We're not doing a lot of it. Right now, this obviously really good process. Folks who we didn't it's not like right. Yeah, when I was so I lived there when I was right. And so I congratulations. Yeah, no, that's done. Short list.
Yes, sir.
A little bit
Did they mention the video to you? Or
No.
you just learned about it?
No.
There will be 4 people speaking, including the consul.
Bonjour à tous, bienvenue. Good morning, everyone. Please take a seat. My name is Fabien Angenès. I'm attaché for science and technology. I'm based at the French Consulate in Los Angeles. And our office specializes in life sciences, but we are also developing activities in other fields of science, such as environment and sustainable development. So I only have a couple of announcements, and then I will leave the floor for several welcoming speeches and followed by the conference. First, I would like to point out that FACS Los Angeles, French-American Climate Talks Los Angeles, is part of a series of conferences organized by the embassies of France in the United States and in Canada to promote awareness on climate change, to introduce the COP21 held in Paris in 2015, and to stimulate crosstalks between France and North America regarding those issues. The last stopover of this conference series is Los Angeles. I would like to thank all the people that made this event possible, our colleagues from the embassies of France in Washington, D.C., in Ottawa, that put this roadshow together, our partners are UCLA, the Los Angeles Regional Collaborative, and the Institute of the Environment and Sustainability, IOES. The speakers, our moderator, our sponsors, and in first place, our platinum sponsors, EDF Renewable Energy, Socal Gas, LADWP, the members of my office, Clément, Viviane, Mandy, all the volunteers that help us set up. You may have also noticed the art exhibition in the lobby. These Green Patriot posters were provided by Susanna Tantin-Sapp. Many people were involved. I would like to express my gratitude to all of them. We did offset the emissions generated by the organization of this series of conferences through a French organization called GRS, Groupe Énergie Renouvelable, Environnement et Solidarité. GOS offers in France and developing countries energy solutions as both a vector of economic and social development and an alternative to existing systems harmful to the environment. A bus powered by compressed natural gas will be at your disposal for the commute from UCLA to the Résidence de France, where the cocktail lunch will be held. It will be located at the entrance of the building and will depart 10 minutes after the end of the conference. The bus will bring you back to UCLA at 2:45 p.m. I will make an announcement at the Résidence de France when the bus will be ready to leave. Lastly, I would like to thank Mr. Axel Cruot, Consul General of France, for continuously encouraging our scientific activities, particularly in supporting the organization of today's event. Mr. Cruot supported our initiative to organize a French-American conference on climate change in LA from the beginning. He also generously opened the Résidence de France for the cocktail lunch that will follow this conference. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Axel Cruot, Consul General of France in Los Angeles.
Madame la Ministre, chère Corinne Lepage, Madame le Maire, dear Pam O'Connor, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I am very glad to welcome you today to discuss the greatest challenge of our time, climate change. Climate change is now widely recognized for what it is, a phenomenon caused by human activities happening right now and whose impacts are felt more and more acutely every day. The latest IPCC report released earlier this month underlines that CO2 emissions and concentration in the atmosphere is unprecedented in at least the last 800,000 years. Climate change is amplifying existing risk, creating new risk for natural and human systems, extreme weather events, loss of biodiversity, massive population displacement. So far, we have failed collectively to tackle the issue and to take appropriate measures. And this has put us on the track for a more dangerous world. In order to maintain global warming at an acceptable level, it is necessary to stop the increase in greenhouse gas emissions right now and make those emissions decline by 5 to 10% per year. It is time for us to move from science to action and political action. Curbing our emissions is a great challenge, yes. It is also a tremendous opportunity because fighting climate change must not be seen as a burden. It must be seen because it represents rather opportunities. Opportunities for a broad pool of solutions and innovations we can share. And limiting our greenhouse gas emissions does not mean that our lifestyles will be constrained and that we will become poor. On the contrary, it must be perceived as a chance to create jobs and ensure well-being in the future, to reinvest new ways of producing and consuming. And we cannot forget is that looking for better must now be the norm rather than looking for always more and more and more. And the next generations have a right to live a healthy life and a healthier life and to be more prosperous. And we must now work to ensure that. And to achieve this objective, we have a duty not to miss the 2015 crucial COP21 in Paris. France has volunteered to hold an international climate conference in December next year because it wants to work collectively on a new global agreement on climate change. The COP 2021 is an amazing opportunity to reach an ambitious agreement limiting carbon emission, and that agreement should include both developed and developing countries. France has decided to take its responsibilities. The French government has engaged the country in an important and unprecedented ecological and energy transition. By 2050, France will divide its greenhouse gas emission by 4 compared to 1990 levels. The French government has also pledged to contribute to the Green Climate Fund with participation of $1 billion per year in order to support developing countries to invest in the energy transition. In addition, France is participating in conferences, seminars, and other events all around the world in order to raise awareness and to trigger action on climate change. That is why we are meeting today at UCLA, because Los Angeles is the last stop on a conference series called FACS, and you have all the stops of this conference. FACS is organized by the embassies of France in both the US and Canada, and I would like to thank the representatives and the head of science services in the embassy who are here with us today. Those conferences aim at mobilizing French, American, and Canadian public opinions, stakeholders, and all concerned citizens on the COP21 conference, and to encourage discussions, interactions, debate among experts and among, once again, concerned citizens between our three countries. For us, the LA conference is especially important since California stands ahead at the forefront of the efforts to mitigate the negative impacts of climate change. California is a leader in environmental innovation, and from what I understand from Jerry Brown, whom I met last week, it aims at keeping being so. It's great. Technology industry is booming, and the state is on track to achieve ambitious emission goals for 2020. Los Angeles is one of the biggest and most dynamic urban centers in the world, and is particularly involved in those efforts to adapt to climate change, and there is a lot to do. The city is pursuing an aggressive strategy to develop solar energy, to protect the coastal ecosystems, and to facilitate the development of clean public transportation. And I'm sure we'll discuss that, especially with Mayor Pam O'Connor, because it's a global effort, and not only Los Angeles, that we have to talk about. We are also facing an unprecedented drought, and the Los Angeles area started to reduce its freshwater use. So it is particularly relevant for us to speak about climate-ready cities here, with more than 50% of mankind now living in urban areas, and probably more in the future. Cities are indispensable actors for fighting climate change. On every continent, we are facing various threats caused by climate disruption, and many of those cities and many of us, we have started to act, to adapt, and to change risks into economic and social opportunities. Our panel of American and French experts is going to discuss those risks and opportunities, and I would like to thank you all for your commitment and for being here, and especially our French panelists coming from far away to be able to have this discussion with you. I would especially like also to thank our moderator, Mr. Matt Kaplan. Your engagement in favor of better knowledge, innovation, and policy making is crucial. I would also like to thank our sponsors, as well as the Los Angeles Regional Collaborative for Climate Action and Sustainability, and the UCLA Institute of the Environment and Sustainability, which have helped in the organization of today's event. Your action is of the utmost importance, so thank you very much. And last but not least, I would like to thank you all for coming, for being a part of this discussion, of being a part of all the efforts that we must collectively lead. Having different organizations, experiences, and backgrounds in this room give me hope. I think it should also all give us hope that we can come together, we can collectively act and gather all parts of society to build climate-ready cities and to effectively fight climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next welcoming remark will be given by Mark Gold, IOES Acting Director and Assistant Vice Chancellor for Research in charge of Environment and Sustainability.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for spending a Friday morning with us. The road to Paris is obviously something that's going to be very closely watched by all of us, and I know a lot of you are participating in that, and so thank you very much for coming this morning. And And you've already heard a thank you to our sponsors. I just want to add, in addition, LADWP, as well as Sempra and Southern California Gas, CBE, EDF, and Sea Grant. Thank you for helping to make this possible. Of course, thank you to the French Consulate for bringing this to UCLA and starting us in this very, very interesting dialogue. So UCLA, what's going on these sorts of issues? I'm going to give you a snapshot. Certainly couldn't possibly go over all the work that's going on campus in this field, but it's incredibly extensive. Just briefly, one of the things, if you don't know already, is UCLA's Grand Challenge. And so from the standpoint of really focusing on a city and getting climate readiness, you won't see a university that's trying to take a more concerted focus in a local area than what UCLA is doing on the Grand Challenge. About a year ago, our chancellor announced that UCLA's very, very first Grand Challenge was going to be in the area of environment and sustainability in Los Angeles. And it was inspired by Alex Hall's downscale research. You're going to hear from Alex later on this morning. Basically saying what LA potentially is going to look like in 2050 from the standpoint of increased temperatures, averaging 4 to 5 degrees warmer, and decreased snowfall, increased wildfire risk, all those other sorts of things I'm sure Alex will touch upon briefly. And we were all thinking about this, saying, well, what do we do in Los Angeles? Do we think that, oh, we're turning into Phoenix and that's okay? Or is there something that we can do as a city to thrive with climate change upon us in that regard? And so what we came up with, and this is the purpose of these Grand Challenges, and it was inspired, our chancellor was inspired by a meeting that he had with President Obama with other university chancellors and presidents, that universities should really be taking on the world's Grand Challenges in doing so, and that inspired and led to this. So what we decided to do was, how do you make LA, if you will, truly sustainable by 2050, looking at 3 specific areas. One is, how do we get to 100% renewable energy or a sustainable energy outcome? 2 is, how do we get to 100% local water? I'm a water guy. That's my background. Right now, the city of LA imports around 89% of their water from more than 200 miles away. So that sort of change is quite dramatic. And then how do we do all of this with no loss of native biodiversity? And so that's the Grand Challenge itself. There was 140 different faculty that have expressed an interest in this. And we've already had, there's 50 students that are now working with some of those faculty on Grand Challenge oriented projects. And so it's started in earnest, and it's only going to grow tremendously over time with that going on. So what else is going on campus that's related to that? Well, the Ameri-Can Institute in the law school is a perfect example. They're very, very focused on Paris. They have a contingent of academics and students who are going to Lima very, very soon. And what they're focusing on is the legal and policy challenges of moving forward with some sort of meaningful climate agreement. But also they had a long history of working on AB 32 and greenhouse gas reduction laws and policies themselves. And that's people like Kara Horowitz and Ann Carlson, Alex Wong, who's been focusing on the China issues for quite some time. And so obviously a big week for him. And then Ted Parson has been doing a lot of work in the geoengineering arena. On the urban design front, you have Tom Main, a world-renowned Pritzker Prize-winning architect at Morphosis, who's on our faculty, and he and a team of his students, as well as staff, are looking at Los Angeles from the standpoint of urban design and what can a sustainable Los Angeles look like, and they should have some ideas that I think will be quite provocative on that within the next year. So look forward to that. At our Luskin Center and the Luskin School of Public Policy, J.R. DeShazo and others are focusing on Los Angeles and California on energy efficiency issues. You might have seen some of that today with this week with LADWP and their energy efficiency targets for buildings that was announced earlier in the week. as well as a great deal of work also working with DWP on feed-in tariff issues. Our engineering department, Rajit God, leads a group called the Smart Grid Energy Research Center. And he's got a big focus also working with DWP, seems to be a recurring theme, so I'm glad DWP is here today. And Department of Energy on demand response management at the appliance scale in individual buildings. It's also doing work on electrical vehicle integration into the grid. So those are a couple of areas. The School of Public Health in the last year has instituted a very successful and innovative program. Hillary Godwin from the School of Public Health, as well as Angelo Bellomo, who's an adjunct faculty there, but works for LA County Department of Public Health. They've actually trained about 60 LA County Department of Public Health staff on how they should deal from the standpoint of an adaptation perspective to public health challenges that are going to be brought by climate change, whether it's increase in vector issues, whether it's heat impacts, a wide variety of different issues. They created a 15-week training program, and that's available online if people are interested in that, so it's something that can be shared well beyond Los Angeles. And then lastly, at the Institute of the Environment and Sustainability, where all of the previous folks are actually also affiliated with them, there's been a lot going on. At the California Center for Sustainable Communities, Stephanie Pincel's group has been focusing on the LA region for quite some time. They're mapping energy and water flows throughout the region, how they've changed over time under various different conditions, the efficacy of various different programs on energy efficiency and the like, and also trying to develop accurate greenhouse gas emissions and energy use inventories by building basis for all of Los Angeles County and each and every city within the county. So hopefully that will be of great use for individual cities in LA County in adaptation planning in the very, very near future. We have Magali Delmas, who's doing behavioral response and energy use at the appliance level, as well as a great deal of work in the corporate sector on greenhouse gas reduction issues. And finally, a really hot topic is both Tom Smith and Brad Schaefer are doing work on the large-scale solar impacts on biodiversity. So they've been looking at Tom Smith as an ornithologist, Brad Schaefer as a herpetologist, and so they've been looking at impacts to the Pacific flyway, migratory birds. Brad Schaefer has been working at desert tortoises, and so the industrialization of the solar industry and how do you protect biodiversity at the same time is moving quickly to greater reliance on renewables with our state's renewable portfolio standards. So that's just a snapshot of a lot of things that are going on here. And I think this is a very, very critical time, not just because of the road to Paris, but what we're seeing, and very, very exciting, is in our own backyard with City of Los Angeles, is that they're really moving for the very, very first time to a comprehensive view of sustainability. I think you'll be seeing a lot more announcements in the very near future about what the Garcetti administration wants to accomplish when it comes to greenhouse gas reductions and renewable energy efficiency, not to mention water use and the like, which you've heard a great deal with the 20% conservation goal by 2017 and reduction on imported water by 50% by 2024. So it's a really exciting time to be dealing with these issues. And again, very grateful that you took the time out to come here today, and I hope you enjoy the program. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker before leaving the floor to the panelists and the moderator is Mrs. Krista Klein, LARC Managing Director.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm the Managing Director for the Los Angeles Regional Collaborative for Climate Action and Sustainability. That's LARC for short. I know we have a very long name. The LARC network is a cross-section of local and regional climate practitioners and decision makers, including academia, cities, LA County, regional agencies, nonprofits, and businesses. Our mission is to create a climate-ready LA region by facilitating the exchange of information, including locally relevant climate research initiatives, of which you'll be hearing a little bit today, best practices in policy development, and funding opportunities. LARC also provides data management and other policy tools to help local governments and policymakers take action on climate change within their respective jurisdictions. I'd like to thank the French Embassy and the Consulate here in LA for bringing the FACT speaker series to Los Angeles as the final stop on the road to the Paris talks next December. It's particularly gratifying that, although the Paris talks will lead to an international accord, the consulate staff here in LA was particularly receptive to focusing on local and regional response to climate change. And they were also embraced bringing together researchers with policymakers and elected officials on both sides, French side, California side, to showcase how locally relevant research is critical to developing place-based strategies that take into account varying climate impacts, differing socioeconomic levels, and vulnerabilities across geographies. It's important that we address climate change in a local and regional context. So I'm excited to hear from these panelists and their work. So let's get started. Matt Kaplan is our esteemed moderator today and comes with us with a wealth of hosting experience. He's the host and producer of Planetary Radio for the Planetary Society, which is the world's largest grassroots space advocacy group. It's an award-winning series that features weekly conversations with scientists and engineers, astronauts, and advocates who are leading humankind's expansion into the final frontier. He also hosts and co-produces Next, People, Science, Tomorrow for KPCC, Southern California Public Radio. Next is a series of live events that look to the future of science and how it will continue to reshape society and what it means to be human. He's a longtime resident of Long Beach, California, so he's local boy, and has 2 adult daughters who are both with us today, so welcome to you too. And he raised them both to be citizens of the solar system. I love that. So we know that it's clear that he's an extremely busy and talented individual, and we're very, very lucky that he's able to spend some time with us here today and help lead this conversation. So welcome, Matt, and the stage is yours.
And I'm going to take the liberty of removing that. I hope it'll continue to work okay. I love that phrase, the road to Paris, don't you? First of all, who wouldn't want to be on the road to Paris? But it's also, I think, the road to the future. At least we can hope. And your being here today puts you on that road as well. Good morning. I am Matt Kaplan, and indeed it is my great honor and pleasure to serve as moderator for a most distinguished panel talking about a most important subject, perhaps the most important subject. I have good news and bad news. This week, the presidents of China and the United States, you may have heard, announced an agreement that will do more than many observers expected to reduce carbon emissions in the coming decades. Now, if you couldn't tell, that was the good news. On the other hand, there's an Oklahoman who will soon chair the United States Senate's Environment and Public Works Committee who calls climate change a hoax. So why do I share these headlines? Because far below these lofty levels of political and diplomatic intrigue and maneuvering are cities all over our tired, overheated world that see a clear and present danger. And many of them are acting on it. Action from below, from the bottom up. That's why we've gathered for this 7th and last of the French Ameri-Can climate talks. You've seen the title. Our theme is Climate Ready Cities, Taking Action to Mitigate Climate Change and Adapt in Urban Areas. And as you've also heard, the FACT series was created by the Canadian and U.S. embassies of the Republic of France. And you know, you can make the argument, I think it'll hold up, that France has set the worldwide standard among developed nations for action on climate change. So it is certainly fitting that we began the morning with remarks from honored representatives of that nation. You've also heard our major and supporting sponsors thanked, and there are a few others that we can mention very briefly: the California Business Alliance for a Clean Economy, the Council for Watershed Health, Physicians for Social Responsibility in Los Angeles, the Climate Registry, one of my longtime favorites, Tree People, and Veolia North America. I've also been told that we have an excellent video. It's been produced by a consortium of Canadian NGOs, which has opened all of the FACTS events as they have traveled across North America. And I think we're ready to see that now, if you'd like to roll it.
Our planet is vast. It's difficult to comprehend the scale. It's difficult, too, to comprehend the scale of humanity and the vast changes we've wrought in a lifetime. Population, production, and consumption have grown exponentially. Roads, railways, airlines, shipping routes, the digital revolution. We've created a globally interconnected society. Evidence is mounting, we've entered the Anthropocene. Humanity is altering Earth's life support system. Carbon dioxide emissions are accelerating. Greenhouse gas levels are unprecedented in human history. The climate system is changing rapidly. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change assesses the risks and options for societies. Its latest report states it is extremely likely humans are the dominant cause of warming in the past 60 years. Without deep emissions cuts, it is likely Earth will cross the target of 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, the target set by international policy. This could happen as early as 2050. If emissions keep rising at current rates, a 4-degree rise by 2100 is as likely as not. It's very likely heat waves will occur more often and last longer. The Arctic will warm faster than the global average. It's like sea ice will vanish in summer within decades if high emissions continue. It's very likely sea level rise will accelerate. Cities and coastal areas are vulnerable. In general, wet regions are set to get wetter, dry regions drier. Monsoons are likely to become longer, their footprint likely to grow, and downpours likely to intensify. The acidity of the ocean has increased 26% since the start of the Industrial Revolution. The full consequences of all these changes on the Earth system are unknown. Humanity's carbon footprint is huge. Societies will need to adapt to climate change. The scale of change depends on decisions made now. Can we remain below 2 degrees? It is possible. But it is up to societies now to decide the future we want. For a likely chance of achieving the 2-degree target, societies can emit another 250 billion tons of carbon. We burn about 10 billion tons of carbon a year. At current rates, we will use this budget in about 25 years.
I didn't realize until it began that this is a video that I also watched online that has, I think you could say, a terrible beauty to it. With that, you can see their names. Panelists, if you join me on stage, note your seats so that people know who they're looking at. And I will have short biographical introductions, sketches for each of them before they make their brief presentations, which will be followed by a general discussion. And then, indeed, we will open it up for questions from you in the audience toward the end of our morning today. Thank you, everyone. Alex, it's entirely up to you whether you want to stay seated. I think you've got the remote for your slides, or you can go to the podium. Our first speaker is someone that I actually wanted to get for a live climate change event that I hosted for KPCC, Southern California Public Radio. He couldn't join us that day because he was off somewhere saving the world. I'm very happy to say that he's here with us, though, this morning. Alex Hall is a professor in this university's Department of Atmospheric and Oceanic Sciences. He's a member of the UCLA Institute of the Environment and Sustainability, one of our major sponsors today. He's also faculty director of the UCLA Center for Climate Change Solutions. He worked with the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, which you will no doubt hear many times today. He worked with them in 2007, contributing to its 4th assessment report, and he was back for the 5th assessment report as lead author of the chapter on climate phenomena and their relevance for future regional climate change. Alex is a recipient of several fellowships, was awarded the National Science Foundation's Early Career Development Award for 6 consecutive years. He serves as lead scientist for LARC's Climate Change in the Los Angeles Region Project. Please welcome Alex Hall.
Great. Well, it's really a pleasure to be here. I want to thank everyone and also the French Embassy for having me here. I'm going to talk today about an ongoing project, really, to look at climate change in the Los Angeles region. And this is work that was initiated, actually, by people in the city of Los Angeles, including Beth Gines, who I think is out in the audience someplace. So this is a collaboration between a municipality and scientists, and I think that's a really interesting aspect of it, one that I hope that we can talk more about later on. Part of this, of course, there's a lot of my own scientific interests in this topic are great, but there's also an element of this project that is intended to change the conversation on climate. And the focus on cities, I think, is very, very justified because cities account for more than half of the world's population and about 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Projections of future climate change impacts on cities can start crucial conversations about mitigation and adaptation. That very beautiful video, I think, is the first time I've actually seen the global impacts of climate change communicated so effectively visually. But I think most people are actually focused on their own surroundings. And so I think you have to address that if you really want to get people talking about climate change. And our tools for projecting future global climate models, those that were used to make these predictions that you just saw, are too low in resolution to really capture what happens in cities like Los Angeles. So here is the region that we are in. Here is the Los Angeles region, and you can see the main features of the topography in the region that shape the region's climate. This is the resolution of a global climate model, such as those used to inform the IPCC projections, and you can see that there's a lot of spatial variation in climate within a single grid box. And what we did in this project was to bring this information down to a 2-kilometer scale, so that we're looking at climate change at this neighborhood scale. And so you can see the various, some of the various municipalities within the Los Angeles region here on this map. And I'm giving you a very brief overview of this because time is very short. But in general, we downscaled about 30 global climate models. These are all the models that are used for the IPCC report to 2-kilometer resolution and neighborhood scale. We looked at many impacts of climate change, including the warming, of course, also the changes in hydrology, precipitation, snowfall, and wildfire, which for the Los Angeles region is a key element of the climate. We looked at 2 scenarios of greenhouse gas emissions that were created by the IPCC scientists. We have a business as usual scenario where greenhouse gas emissions continue to increase at their current rates. So that's not the outcome we're aiming for. And then there's the mitigation scenario where greenhouse gas emissions are brought under control over the coming decades. We also look at 3 different time periods. There is what we're calling the baseline, which is the last 20 years of the 20th century, the mid-century period, 2041 to 2060, and finally 2081 to 2100 is the final time slice that we looked at. Again, here's just a sampling. This is changes in average August temperatures. And unfortunately, this is in degrees Fahrenheit for those of you from France who are not used to our strange units. But this is the temperature, the average temperature in the baseline. So this recent climate period and all of the and the variability also in August temperatures during the baseline. So the little dots are showing you the average temperatures in August over this time period. And this is just to give you a sense of what the current climate is and what the variability is in the current climate. And here is what happens under business as usual when we average over the region. The big dot there is the most likely outcome, which is the average of the GCMs, and this red bar here is the range. And then that's for the business as usual scenario. The blue here is for the mitigation scenario. You can see that there's actually not a huge difference between these two. And one of the key findings that we have is that by mid-century, no matter what we do about greenhouse gas emissions, there's still a significant change in climate. And what that means is that climate adaptation is absolutely mandatory. We have to think about climate adaptation. And this red horizontal bar here is the warmest August in the baseline period, just to give you a sense of the context. So by mid-century, we see most likely outcomes for any emission scenario that are actually warmer than the warmest year that we had in the baseline. So that's gives you a sense of the kind of change that we're talking about. If we put that in the context of the variability, it's significant. If you go to the end of the century and you look at the mitigation scenario, you see a kind of a stabilization of climate. You see that we still have a warmer climate, but it's not. It's a little bit less warm than the mid-century outcome. That's for mitigation. Under business as usual, we see yet another increment of warming by the end of the century, so that the warming is really a very different in a very different state. The climate's in a different state by this time period. So even if you look at the model that produces the least amount of warming, which would be the lowest point on that vertical red bar there, that's still a lot warmer than the warmest month in the baseline. So we're talking about a really changed climate, a dramatically changed climate under business as usual. And this is meant to really communicate the stakes to the public about greenhouse gas emissions reductions and what we would accomplish by actually addressing our carbon consumption. Okay, so one of the fun things about this study is that we're able to put this information in a very local context, a neighborhood by neighborhood scale. So one of the important aspects of climate change, obviously, is changes in extremely hot days. This bar here in the bottom gives you a sense of how many of what our scale is here. This is the number of extremely hot days per year. And this is the current climate, how many extremely hot days we have per year in Los Angeles. And you can see that there's quite a variation across the landscape, and that reflects the variation in climate across the landscape. This is what we have currently. This is what we have by mid-century under business as usual. And you can see there's a very significant increase in the number of extremely hot days. And this is one of the results that I'm highlighting from this study, because this was actually used, I think it was mentioned earlier in some of Mark Gould's remarks, by the County of Los Angeles in their public health planning, because they want to understand where to invest resources in helping local populations adapt to heat waves. And so this information is actually policy relevant. And the spatial variation across the landscape helped to start a conversation about climate change adaptation in very concrete terms. Okay, so some next steps. We want to complete our downscaling of climate change in the Sierra Nevada mountains, which we're undertaking right now. This is a non-local source of water and extremely relevant for the hydrologic future of Los Angeles, because we get so many of our water resources from other places. We are working on improving downscaling techniques to make this information even better and higher quality, and especially for other variables relevant to climate. We are also developing tools for resource managers, decision makers, and the public to use data from these studies. Also, we're open to bringing these types of downscaling studies to other regions and cities, so that we can start this conversation in other places about climate change. So, in a nutshell, one of the purposes of this work is to help the public understand the stakes, bring climate change down to a scale that people can actually understand and they can relate to on a visceral level, and to help people make informed trade-offs about climate change adaptation and mitigation decisions. So, with that, I will end it.
Thank you. Alex, before we bring up our next panelist, and by the way, is the microphone working well enough? I know when he turns his head, it goes down a little bit. Okay. How unique is that data? Is that fairly rare, that resolution of data that you have developed here in Southern California?
Well, there are other places in the world where this type of work is done, and certainly in France, there's, and this has been done for Paris, and so there are other places where we have this sort of information. For Los Angeles, this is a unique data set, and one that is, I think, uniquely valuable for the Los Angeles region. So I think this is the type of information that we need for I think, every major metropolitan area in the world.
This is a topic actually that I was discussing before we began the event today with our next speaker. Valérie Masson-Delmotte is a senior researcher at France's Climate and Environmental Science Lab. Her research has helped us understand the planet's dynamic climate and water cycle, relying on such natural archives as tree rings and ice cores, along with computational models. Like Alex, she has contributed to the IPCC's AR5 as coordinating lead author of the report's Paleo Climate chapter. She has written illustrated books for children about climate and the greenhouse effect, which I think will come up a little bit later as well. So perhaps it's no wonder that she was named Woman Scientist of the Year in 2013 by the French Ministry of Higher Education and Research. Please welcome Dr. Masson-Delmotte.
So the topic today is, are our cities climate ready? When our cities were designed and built, people didn't know what was the natural range of climate variability, of precipitation variability. Since the last decades, the climate science has made major progress. We know now much better the range of natural climate variability on timescales of decades to thousands of years in many places. We already see a changing climate, and we understand better and better which part of the observed changes are due to human influence. It is clear on global warming. It is clear on some extreme events such as heat waves and heavy rainfalls. It is also clear on the rising sea level. Climate science is also providing tools to explore the future. And in the business as usual scenario that you've already seen, which means each year emitting more greenhouse gases, as this has been the case in the past decades. We expect impressive changes both in the magnitude and the rate of changes of many of the climate aspects. Up to 5 times faster temperature rise than observed during the 20th century. Up to 5 times faster sea level rise as well. Our activities are enhancing risks. You know, when we speak about climate change, what's always coming in the public debate is uncertainty. But the more we add greenhouse gases in the atmosphere and trap heat, the more we enhance uncertainties. Because what will be in front of us in the future is not what happened in the past. So we are creating new risks. And the IPCC report on urban areas and cities is in fact quite clear and reports very high confidence that climate change is enhancing risks in urban areas for people, and especially poor population living in exposed areas today, where there is a lack of infrastructure. Risks for assets, risks for our economy, and for the ecosystems that are associated with the cities. Risk with heat stress, and it was shown that it's now possible to map them and anticipate, but also risks associated with extreme precipitation, landslides, coastal and inland flooding, and you know it much better than many others, drought and water scarcity. Climate science is policy relevant, but it is not policy prescriptive. Governments decided that climate change that would lead to global warming by more than 2 degrees Celsius, about 4 degrees Fahrenheit, is unacceptable because of the dangerous consequences. Climate science provides clear paths for meeting that target. We've already emitted 2/3 of the cumulative greenhouse gas emissions, if they go on this way, would lead to warming above that target. So we know the amount of effort to be made. We have paths for mitigation, paths for adaptation, and therefore it's now time to open the discussion with the rest of the society, with the policymakers, with people who vote, and to make changes in their everyday life. And for urban areas, there are many co-benefits in dealing with climate change, for quality of life and for health, with energy efficiency, cleaner energy sources, reduced use of energy and water. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. You talked a lot about risks.
Yes.
New risk, enhanced risks. Do you have any doubt in your mind that there are risks that are not yet known, that are not in the models, that will surface as this problem worsens?
There are processes that take place at the small scale which are not fully resolved in our current climate models. And with improved capacity for computing, higher resolution climate models, there are hints that new risks may emerge. One example is that, for instance, for us in Europe, we are not usually affected by hurricanes. You know, they form in the Gulf area, and then they go towards the east coast of the US, and then they dissipate as extratropical storms, and we get only the weak end of that. In a much warmer climate, a warmer sea surface temperature in the middle Atlantic could lead to forming hurricanes really not at the same place as today, and they could hit our coasts in August when our trees still have leaves and create new risks for which we are absolutely not prepared at the moment. So that's just one example. It's one study so far with the highest resolution European atmospheric model. So it's not part of the main findings of the IPCC assessment, but that's the type of new risks that are being addressed by the climate science community.
All right. Thank you for adding to the depressing outlook. Thank heaven for the online translation tools that allowed someone like me with terrible French language skills to enjoy our next panelist's excellent presentation at TEDx Dijon, Danielle Zimmer. With a background in agricultural engineering and hydrology, Danielle spent 15 years at the French Agricultural and Environmental Engineering Research Center before becoming director of the World Water Council. He also created the World Water Forum as part of the council that brings together stakeholders around the world, including heads of state. He has organized ministerial level conferences and conducts global projects that consider disaster prevention and climate change. Since 2011, he has been the Director of Innovation at Climate KIC, the European Community's primary climate innovation initiative, where he manages a large portfolio of highly innovative new approaches and solutions. Please welcome Danielle Zimmer.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Actually, we have now it's the third visit and the third event of this type, and each time it's very interesting and to have exchanges with our colleagues from the US and Canada. I'm here to represent France, but as was said previously, I'm also in a European initiative, which shows that France is not alone. We are actually engaged collaboratively in Europe in addressing climate change. And in 2010, Europe decided to create a number of initiatives that would enhance and develop the capacity of Europe in innovation. Europe had the feeling that we were lying a bit behind the US, Asia on innovation, and that we needed especially to be much better on open innovation. And that's why these KICs, strange name, knowledge and innovation communities, 3 of them exist today, have been created in order to develop new ecosystems, European ecosystems, where academia, companies of different sizes, small ones, like many startups, but also big ones, can work together also with cities and policymakers. So our ecosystem is at the moment a partnership of 250 organizations in Europe, located in 13 different countries. Our mission is very simple: create jobs and create a low carbon society and climate resilient economy. So we we have quite a number of activities in education, for instance, where we train the innovators that are needed to tackle climate issues. We have an entrepreneurship pillar, what we call pillar, dealing with the support of startups and SMEs. We are accelerating the route to market or the development of more than 300 startups at the moment that are all clearly addressing climate change issues. We are also supporting a number of SMEs, and we create finally new products, new services, and what is more important, we try to deploy them to the market because innovation is not just about inventing new tools, but it's really ensuring that these tools are actually deployed and used by end users and consumers. In our work at the moment, we naturally observe that cities are major drivers on climate change issues. This is not a surprise, and many cities have joined Climate Kick. We have a network of European cities, but we also work outside Europe, and I will tell you that we also have some contact and some work here with Los Angeles. So what are the type of activities, just to give you a flavor? We have a number of tools that we are developing to help cities transform their targets into clear roadmaps and helping them take decisions on where they need to act, when, in order to meet the targets they have set for themselves. So we are working on this, I have to say, with a company that is based in California, which is S3, which is the world leader on GIS, Geographic Information Systems. We are developing a number of modules that can help in city planning, in designing new transport systems, in looking at the emissions and reducing the emissions of buildings. And we create, so at the moment, together with S3, a global marketplace for these tools that will help the cities address their issues. So this is an interesting, in a way, collaboration, although we work, of course, with S3 Europe. But our teams are often here to attend the global marketplaces that S3 organize here in California. We also work very much on adaptation for cities, and there our discovery is that what is very important is to try to connect the different city systems. For instance, we try to connect much better water management in cities with the greening of the cities, because at the moment cities function in silos, and very often these two elements, water and vegetation, are not managed in an integrated way. And you could do much better by, for instance, reusing rainwater and ensuring that you have, for instance, storage to irrigate your vegetation, but also to reduce at the same time the flash flood risks, and also reduce the heat island effect. We have learned that many tools and many solutions already exist, but what is very important at the end of the day is that these tools be deployed. And so to have them designed and is in one thing, but ensuring that the stakeholders who need them will be using them is also very important. So we are convinced that we need to create new, what I call climate value chains, meaning that you look at a tool that can potentially help a city to reduce certain emissions, but then you need to be sure that the stakeholders, the utilities, for instance, communities living in certain neighborhoods, the industries also that are in the cities use these tools and transform and transition to a new and more efficient or more climate friendly way of living and acting. We also are convinced that a lot of these solutions need to be scaled out. We see everywhere that solutions exist, but people do not know that these solutions have been tested, and people also do not know how to scale out these solutions, because the situation in one city and another one are different, and sometimes it's not easily applicable. So we have created a network of cities that share their experiences with the different innovations that they are testing on the ground. And through this, we hope to be able to scale out a number of innovations that are actually happening in the cities. And finally, I would like to say that we also feel that you cannot control very well things that you do not monitor properly. So we have embarked in a large program on monitoring, reporting, and verification of greenhouse gas in the cities. And on this, again, there is a clear collaboration between Paris, Rotterdam, but also Los Angeles, on developing a set of toolkit that can be used for cities to actually monitor what their emissions are by combining bottom-up inventories with top-down measurements. This is done under the Megacities Carbon Project, for instance, where it's more Caltech and the JPL, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory of the NASA, that is involved. So these are the seeds of a global program that we hope to be able to scale up and also demonstrate in COP21, showing that cities are also taking steps to monitor and verify that their emissions are actually decreasing, but that also using these tools, cities have the possibility to prioritize their action and be able to report then on the successes that they are reaching. So this is just to give you a snapshot of a number of things that we do, but cities are very much on the forefront of our action in Europe, as well as we understand here in the US, where even if sometimes at federal level it's not so easy, we see a lot of momentum that has been created by the cities and also by the regions, because California has been at the origin also of the R20 initiatives that was launched by Arnold Schwarzenegger, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years ago, which is a coalition of regions to tackle climate change issues. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Daniel. Daniel, you mentioned some success that you have had in bringing together many organizations, agencies. You were telling me earlier today that there may be a surprising lack of coordination in certain key areas at the United Nations.
Yes, I've been working in these international fora for quite a number of years, and there are important issues such as water and energy that do not have a single entity in the UN, a single focal point to address these issues. And this was, for instance, the case on water, where 25 UN agencies work on that issue. And in fact, UN have created a number of organizations such as UN Water, UN Energy, UN Oceans as well, that are there just to coordinate the efforts of the UN and to streamline and ensure that they are developed in synergy. So there is probably, so on climate, we are lucky that there is the Framework Convention, but there are many other areas related that will be impacted by climate change, where the collective actions of our nations need to be strengthened, and it's not really easy, I can tell you, to work on water when you have so many UN agencies competing sometimes against each other and not struggling indeed to coordinate their efforts.
Thanks again, Danielle. Our next panelist, the first thing that we need to do is congratulate her. Because 10 days ago, Pam O'Connor was reelected to the City of Santa Monica City Council. That's where she's already, please. That is where she has already served 4 terms as that Progressive Communities Council elected mayor. In all, she has been an elected public servant for 2 decades now. She's also been on the Los Angeles County Metro Board since 2001, overseeing all development and operation of the transit system for the nation's most populous county. Pam is a past president of SCAG, the Southern California Association of Governments. We're talking about bringing agencies together. She has joined with cities around the world that are working on local solutions for environmental, sustainability, and climate issues as part of the ICLEI Local Governments for Sustainability. She has a master's degree in planning and another one in technology management, and she's been able, I'm sure, to rely on those skills as she acts on her passions for transportation and sustainability. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Pam O'Connor.
Well, thank you, Matt. Thank you. So I say good morning to everyone and bonjour to our French colleagues. That is all the French I can do. I am so impressed at the bilingual abilities of my colleagues up here. I am pleased to be back on the City Council in the City of Santa Monica. We are a progressive city. If you do not know about us, we are just a little west of here. We are a city of about 90,000 people. But we are part of the region. We are partners with our other cities in Los Angeles County, because if you don't know, there are 88 cities in Los Angeles County, and we're happy to be in the great city of Los Angeles, which is getting close to 4 million population, but the other 87 cities in Los Angeles County contribute to the 10 million people who live in our county. And then we are also partners with our other counties in our region, our Southern California region, and that under the umbrella of SCAG, the Southern California Association of Governments, means that our region consists of 194 cities, 6 counties, and 16 million people. So we, as a city in Santa Monica, are doing our best to be leaders, but we are working together with cities in Los Angeles County and the region. And as we are doing that, we are looking to both address climate change, but also key to that, as noted by others, is making cities more livable, because that is what it gets down to too. Having the livability aspects of a city, which clearly rely on having a good climate and reasonable climate. Now, what Santa Monica has done has started out with our Sustainable City Plan, and I have to give kudos to the director of the I can't remember your institute, Institute for the Environment and Sustainability here at UCLA, Dr. Mark Gold, who was part of, back in 1994, of the Santa Monica's Environmental Task Force. They were leaders in putting together a sustainable city plan for the city of Santa Monica. So that plan was adopted and has been the guiding principle, and actually has been inculcated. It's become part of the culture of Santa Monica as we move forward, as we take actions on a variety of things, addressing issues in Santa Monica. It is wrapped around and wrapped under those guiding principles of the Sustainable City Plan. And as that has grown over the years to move from just being natural resources and focusing on the natural environment to looking at livability, housing, transportation, the other aspects that really make a complete city. How we do that and what our goals are for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, we've identified that plan, that Sustainable City Plan, has evolved. It has gone through various iterations over the years. It is still more of a long-term plan, although we do measure and check in on our progress. But in terms of climate, we decided to move forward with a short-term plan. We call that the 15 by 15 Climate Action Plan. And that is based on the year 2015, which is now just around the corner, but it was adopted about 2 years ago. What are those steps? What are the kinds of things that we can do to really implement, to make happen, that we can reduce our greenhouse gas emissions in Santa Monica to 15% below what they were in 1990. So again, having that mission, having that culture of sustainability, having both the long-term plan and the short-term plan has been important to that. And then as we are, as I noted, just part of one of 88 cities in the county of Los Angeles, what are the kinds of things that we can do with other organizations, such as Los Angeles County Metro, which is the agency that provides the light rail, the subway, operates buses throughout the county, and is a transportation planning agency for the county. And working again with SCAG, the Southern California Association of Governments, and that is the agency that adopted the state-mandated sustainable community strategy that is part of the regional transportation plan. And I'm proud to say that was adopted by our regional council at SCAG in 2012 with the goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions per capita by 9% by 2020 and 16% by 2035. So those things are there, but now, as Danielle noted, we have to implement. We have the plans, but what are we going to be doing to implement those plans? Again, I noted in Santa Monica, we have our short-term climate action plan, and we continue with our sustainable city plan. But to do this, you do need partnerships. And in Los Angeles County and the region, SCAG and LA County Metro have partnered to work together on what are the kinds of things we can do to achieve those reduction goals. Things such as working together on complete streets programs, working together on active transportation. That has really become important in Los Angeles County as we've gotten cleaner air over the last 2 decades. People walking, people bicycling, using new smart technology to have access to transit. The growing transit network in Los Angeles County and throughout the region has meant that active transportation with, again, the co-benefits, the public health benefits, will help people move around without having to rely on the single driver in an automobile. New technologies. Santa Monica has been at the forefront of new technologies. Fleets that had used alternative fuels and continue to be early adopters and innovators. Metro is also looking at, which has the largest CNG, compressed natural gas fleet of buses in the United States, was an early adopter of that technology. It's also looking at zero emissions truck collaborative. So again, working together on the new technologies, working together to implement. And how that implementation is done is often the use of pilot programs. So the agencies, Metro and SCAG, putting together opportunities for cities to reach out to cities, to have the grants, to have funding, to try a pilot program. Metro has a sustainable transportation demonstration project. SCAG has a Compass Green Regions project. And at SCAG, over 150 cities and agencies have applied for those grants. And each one of those is a unique, different plan, unique, different way of approaching something that needs to be solved in their city or their county, tied to transportation, tied to sustainability. Each of those becomes another tool in the toolbox for other cities, other places to learn from, to see that this is how something, give an idea, it was done, here's how it can be done, that it can be done even if you are a smaller city, it can be done if your city's working together. So again, those pilot programs, getting real things out there on the street that will both contribute to the quality of life and with the real goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And then lastly, it is really important to measure and monitor. That ongoing measuring and monitoring and reporting to the public is critical. Santa Monica, we've done this through a regular, every 2 years, we do a report card. We do a report card based on our sustainable city plan. And we use the report card format to report to the public because you can do that in a relatively short document. It's something that people can easily grasp. It gets a letter grade, but also identifies what were the obstacles if you couldn't quite achieve what had hoped to, what was in the way, what were the barriers, what can be changed, how to overcome those obstacles. In addition, agencies such as Metro and SCAG are using performance metrics and reporting on those and measuring. And again, that really is important. It helps the plan evolve and evolve in the way that not necessarily say, oh, well, we didn't achieve our goal, so let's lower the goal. It's not that. It's we didn't achieve our goal. What are those barriers? Maybe we need to do something different and figure out that path forward. So again, it's an exciting time in our region and our cities, and I'm really happy to be back on the Santa Monica City Council for another 4 years. So thank you all.
Thank you. You talked about the sharing among the communities here in Southern California, which is almost global in size with those more than 80, nearly 90 different cities. Is that, in your experience, have you seen that same kind of sharing on the international front, since you have been involved globally?
Right, yes, and as you noted, ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, that is cities from across the United States and across the world coming together and participating at the COP as the local authorities. Certainly, not a nation, but if you add all the cities together, we are bigger than many nations, even in Los Angeles County. And ICLEI came to be partly because things were not happening at the national level in places like the United States. And again, it's that concept of you get enough cities taking actions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, you can start making some progress that way. You don't have to wait for your nation to join in, because we'd be waiting a long time here, to join into those kinds of international accords. So we decided we're not going to wait. It's also even analogous to transportation in Los Angeles County, in that most of our funding comes from local sources. Our voters in Los Angeles County voted to fund transportation, and cities, again, taking action and saying, we're not saying that the states and national governments don't have some responsibility. They do, but we have said we are not waiting. And again, participating both at the local level, the national levels, and the international levels, again, through ICLEI, and saying this is what cities are doing, and countries, get your act together. If we can do it, you should be able to do it.
Excellent. Thank you. Time for our last very distinguished panelist. Corinne Lepage became Environment Minister for France in 1995. 2 years later, her leadership resulted in the first national sustainable development strategy. And that was just one of her scores of accomplishments. In 2006, when the United Nations Environment Program named the 10 most important European women working on the environment, she was on that list. She was elected to the European Parliament in 2009 and appointed vice chair of the Parliament's Committee on the Environment, Public Health, and Food Safety. Just 4.5 years ago, she brought together 30 men and women who have served as environment ministers around the globe in a new think tank that studies international ecological governance. Oh, and by the way, along the way, she founded a political party. It started as another think tank. It's the Citizenship Action Participation for the 21st Century, otherwise known primarily in France as CAP 21. That think tank that became an influential political party, and along the way, she ran for president. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Corinne Lepage.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here today. Talking about future of city was a difficult exercise and will be more and more difficult with climate change. Imagine this exercise for cities like Detroit in 1950, like New Orleans in 2000, or like Pripyat near Chernobyl in 1980. Imagine this exercise for engineers talking about building phone network in developing countries, discover that now everybody uses cell phone and don't need network. For 4 billion people today, solar energy is less expensive than other sources of electricity, and they don't need to build network. But we can try to imagine cities which are adapted to the climate change because they have reduced the green gas energy. The pillar of the third industrial revolution proposed by Jeremy Rifkin are a good way. They propose shifting to renewable energy, transforming the building stock of every continent into green micropower plants to collect renewable energy on site, deploying hydrogen and other storage technology in every building and through the infrastructure to store intermittent energies, using internet technology to transform the power grid of every continent into an energy internet that acts just like the internet, and transitioning the transport fleet to electric plug-in and fuel cell vehicles that can buy and sell green electricity on a smart continental interactive power grid. The creation of a renewable energy regime loaded by buildings, partially stored in the form of hydrogen, distributed via a green electricity internet, and connected to plug-in zero-emission transport opens the door to a third industrial revolution. But it is not sufficient. New links between nature and cities are to be found, for example, urban agriculture. In the same direction, links between health and climate change and more strength. A city which don't want to mitigate greenhouse gas and adapt to the risk of climate change is to a city where citizens live badly and are often sick. The most important, in my opinion, is the confidence of the public in this new life, the capacity of representation of this new city life. If we are optimistic, we can build a city sustainable, desirable, a city where the well-being and the well-living is a reality. We can't stop the disaster and act. It's a momentum. For this reason, I don't want to be pessimistic and talk about pessimistic view. Thank you for your attention, and you're suffering my English.
You did very good. You did very good.
Thank you, Corinne. Your English is far better than my French. As I told the panelists, I'm not allowed to speak French at home because my accent and pronunciation are so bad. You talked about the work by Jeremy Rifkin and your support of it. And this is a call really for tremendous economic and sociological change. Do you think that it is possible to present the environmental issues we have talked about as being a solution to reconciling the very serious economic and social problems that we face in cities and beyond?
I think that today the crisis and the problem is global. It's impossible to separate economic, social, ecological problems. It's the same. And the objective is to find an economic solution to link the ecological problem with the economical solution. And Mrs. Meyer, you speak about technology, about change to live, to drive, to build, and so on. It's sure, but the most difficult, in my opinion, is to persuade the people that is not to live more badly, to live with more difficulties. It's to convince that it's a lone solution, because if we don't change, it's a disaster, but to convince too that it's good, that is well-being, that is when links between people, that is better health, and so on. That is the point, the most important, in my opinion.
Thank you. Now, as many of you have no doubt noticed, it is already past 11:30, and we were set to end the event at noon today. We, of course, want to encourage further discussion here. I hope everyone agrees that what we have already heard is certainly valuable and well worth the extra time that we have taken. But we do want to make sure that we open this up for your questions as well. So just a little bit more discussion here, and we will go a little bit, I've been authorized to go a little bit past noon today. Maybe we'll shoot for 12:15 or so. That sound okay, Krista? Let me start with this. I mean, I apologize for my provincialism, my pride as an Angelino and Southern Californian. But what is the view of what is being accomplished in Southern California? Is California overall viewed as distinct in its response to the climate change challenge from the rest of the United States? And anybody who would like to begin with that? Corinne?
If you want it.
Please.
I think that in Europa, and I can speak from the member of parliament, we don't see California as the rest of United States. It's clear, because you have a very good example. And when we talk about new technology, innovations, new system for energy, decentralization, for electricity, we speak about experiment in California. But it's very difficult for United States. It's very good news that we have perhaps an agreement between United States and China. But I don't know if it's sure, because you have the Congress. And yes, and the engagement of China is very light. And it's a good news because it's a good direction.
It's a start.
Yes, but well, and I was 5 times in the COP since Copenhagen until Warsaw, and United States was not very pushing.
Sadly. I know at least a couple more of you want to comment. Danielle, how about you first? And then Valerie?
Yeah, I just want to say that to tackle climate change issues, will require new solutions and to create a new economy and new models also for our societies. And I didn't say it, but we not only in Climate Kick look at California as a leader on climate change, but also very much on innovation and in creating these new models. You know that the big the global companies that are created at the moment that develop in California are pave the way to a number of new models that also will change the world and probably will be helpful also in changing the economy, in changing the way we consume, sharing things much more, for instance, and is something that is important. And so we are not looking only at climate, but also more broadly in producing new models for the world and for the world we need tomorrow.
Valerie?
What I think is that deeply our civilization, which we share with different cultures between Europe and the US, it has its roots in a close relationship between science, technology, and policy. And what is striking me during this, French, Canadian, American conversations we've had in New Orleans, Vancouver, and here, is the importance of political leadership. In New Orleans, there's the example of a lack of political vision about risks and disaster. And at the moment, there's also a strong political leadership with reduction of risks. And New Orleans is now more prepared with respect to sea level than Miami, for instance. Vancouver has the target of being the greenest city And it's a city with an excellent quality of living, of course, as well. And this political leadership is extremely important in, bringing energies towards a common target. So what's striking me for Southern California is the feeling I think you share that you are maybe an exception sometimes. The feeling that California is facing a number of risks. It's an attractive area with a growing population. When you think of climate change, the subtropics, the areas with a Mediterranean climate, they are at the hotspots of risks associated with the water scarcity. And I think looking at the Mediterranean area, looking at Australia, South America, South Africa, that have, in the both hemispheres, the same situation, I think you have a leadership with respect to planning ahead, thinking water resources in a changing climate.
You went in exactly the direction I was hoping to go, because I do want to, if any of you are willing, to talk about additional cities. Valérie just told us about some around the world that are showing leadership. Are there others that are setting a great example? And maybe not just in developed nations. Can we look to any third world nations that have cities that are leading the way? Mayor O'Connor.
Right, and I could name many cities, but that would take too long, because things are happening at cities on every continent at different levels of scale, and that's where we do learn from each other. And I think that's why it is important for cities to continue to work together and to share their efforts. One thing I would like to address a little bit about the water scarcity, because that is something that is shared by many cities and throughout our world, and certainly has now become a major issue in Southern California and the whole state of California. And again, working on issues of water and sharing that kind of knowledge on how to grow in a way that one conserves water, but yes, recognizes that you are going to grow. And in Santa Monica, we realize that we as part of the region will continue to grow. And the projections for our region, by the way, are that the population will grow because of births, people being born, births over deaths, not just people immigrating, coming to the region. So we have to figure out how to accommodate that growth with the limited water we have, and water as being a precious resource. So one of the things we, as my own city, is doing is taking upon us a water independence plan to figure out how we can conserve and supply water in a way that by 2020 we can be water independent, and also doing it in a way that is the most resource conservation way. But again, cities throughout the world, we are learning from each other, and on other continents, such as Australia, for many has been an area of drought and limited water for years. Cities like Adelaide and South Australia are among the driest in the world, and the kinds of things they are doing can help inform us in Southern California, have already. And again, that cross fertilization of ideas is really critical.
Would anyone else like to talk about other parts of the world, particularly cities, that should be looked to? Alex?
I'm the least qualified person to talk about this, but I will anyway. I just want to make an observation, which is that I think that the cross-conversation, the cross-city conversations are actually where all the innovation's been happening on climate change, or most of it's been happening. There's organizations like I think it's called the C40, where there are, it's a organization of cities that who meet, the environmental leaders within the cities meet and share ideas, and that sharing is pretty novel, and I think very innovative. So I think the cities are actually have been leaders on climate change.
Do you believe that cities, at least in some countries, are capable of driving change at the national level? Corinne?
Yes, I try to answer. I think that it's easier for cities to advance that for states, because for states you have other consideration, geostrategic consideration, geopolitical consideration, general economic consideration, and at the COP, it's we can see that we speak about climate change, but we speak about a lot of questions. For this reason, if we have a minimal level of cities which are engaged in the way of the reduction of greenhouse gas and in the way of adaptation, I think that we can break the system, because it's a question of people, number of people. If we have a lot of cities in a lot of countries, I think that we can be optimistic. And I think that is a good way to change the system. Better way than the state, because it's very difficult at the level state.
You just reminded me that I think it was this morning on National Public Radio, on Morning Edition, there was a story about the changing political environment in China, where, of course, not all environmental results and conditions in the cities, we all know about the condition of the air in the major cities, is even reported to the people. It is censored. But you can't censor what the air looks like. And that even in that authoritarian country, change is being driven from below. Do others of you see change being driven from the bottom up? And Mayor O'Connor, I know you wanted to say something. I don't know if it's relevant to that, but please.
Well, it's a little bit. It's like you have to grab the political will where it is. And right now it's not in our nation, our federal level, but I think what's really important to what's happening in Southern California and California is that the state government in 2005 passed AB 32, and that, there's both that bottoms up and that top down. And within California, you had that AB 32, and then you had the Global Warming Solutions Act, and then to implement that, you had something called SB 375, which has required metropolitan planning organizations to do these sustainable communities strategies. And so that some cities and some folks kind of fought back because you don't want to be told what the state to tell you what to do. But what came out of that, it's not just a plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but the co-benefits for livability. And so now that fight about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, maybe it's not gone away totally, because there were some cities and some elected officials who still say climate change is not real, but they've on the bandwagon of how can we create better cities. So again, having that top-down can help, and the state of California, I think, really helped us with that legislation, and we've moved further as a region and as cities together in Southern California because of that. So where's this political will? Grab it, and grab it when you can, because it may not be there long, but once that law is in place, you can run with it.
Valerie?
I want to make a comment which is not fully politically correct. I think sometimes at the national level, there's a strong collusion between the interests of the fossil fuel industry and policymakers.
Oh no, that's not. How could that possibly be true?
There's a chance that at the local level, there's more independence and therefore more ability to act without the barriers, the very strong barriers to protect existing assets.
Alex.
I agree with that assessment. I don't think it's politically incorrect. I think it's just correct. I also want to point out that when you talk about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, for example, it's that part of it is an inherently local conversation. In Los Angeles, it's all about public transportation. That 50% of our greenhouse gas emissions come from transportation. Reducing greenhouse gas emissions is a conversation about mobility and transportation and urban planning. That's not a conversation for the House of Representatives or the President of the United States or the Senate or the Supreme Court. It's the conversation for us. And so I think that while it is crucial that we develop partners at the national and international level, a lot of the conversation really has to be driven at the local level. And so I think what's happening is actually very, very healthy.
I have so many more questions. Some of them I want to give credit to Clément from the consulate here, the Consulate of France here in Los Angeles, who helped to develop some of what we've talked about. But as I said, we want to make sure that we have a few minutes to pull you folks up and get your reactions and questions primarily to our extremely distinguished panel. And we probably should go ahead and begin that now. I'm going to save my prerogative to ask the last question of the panel, but we'll do that in a few minutes. So we do have some staff people who have microphones. Do you need this one? Oh, there you go.
Switch. Happily switch.
Hello again. Hands in the air. The microphone will come over to you. As always in this kind of situation, please try to make it a question, not a statement. Make it as succinct as possible, and then please hand the microphone back to our staff assistant. And sir, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jim Stewart with the Sierra Club. My question is, California leads the nation in terms of having a price on carbon through AB 32. Is it possible for cities? How is it possible for cities to put a price on carbon? Because it seems to be harder and harder at state and national levels to do so.
And AB 32 has already been mentioned, and I hope everyone in the audience is fairly familiar with this rather progressive measure taken unilaterally by the state of California. Does anybody want to respond? How can cities achieve the same kinds of goals that AB 32 has set for the entire state?
I think that things like setting price on carbon, and I think that requires a partnership, or that requires involvement at the state level, or that requires a certain level of government support of a large enough scale. But I think that what cities can do is pursue solutions that do end up reducing greenhouse gases, but also accomplish other goals. And in Los Angeles, for example, I think you have a younger generation that really prefers more walkable neighborhoods. You look at the way the city is set up. In order for it to grow economically, we have to build density in the city, and we also have a congestion problem. We have a mobility problem, and if you address all those things with a better public transit network, then you're also reducing greenhouse gases. So I think we have to focus on those types of win-win solutions at the local level to reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
Danielle.
Well, I'm not sure I will respond completely, but what we see at the moment is that a number of initiatives are taken, for instance, in China, where it's maybe not the cities, but regions, and with big cities are developing their own cap and trade mechanisms within their areas, their regions. And so it shows that something is feasible and is actually taking place. And we see also that big companies at the moment are putting a price tag on carbon in their activities in order to become more efficient and to reduce their emissions. So large corporations that are working globally do this also, and so we see that initiatives are taking place at the bottom, if I may say, bottom level, that pave the way also to mechanisms that perhaps will be aggregated at some point. I don't know if this would be feasible, but something is happening there.
So certainly cities can do a lot, but there are some things that they cannot do, but maybe can help to drive. Yes, how about right over here? Hello.
Hi, I'm Magali Delmas, Institute of the Environment and Sustainability. So I have a question to the panel about COP21. I wanted to ask your opinion of what you were hoping for, what according to you is the best case scenario, what type of results can we expect? And then from you also the perspective of the cities, what role can cities play in this negotiation?
And because that was to be my last question, please, if each of you would answer this now, and we'll begin maybe at the other end, Danielle. I'll only add to that. What would you most like to see come out of this worldwide meeting that would tell you, yes, this has met the bar for success?
Okay. We are, first of all, as a Climate Kick, also very much preparing COP21. And what we are doing is to bring in solutions. So there is a large initiative that is taking place at the moment that is called Solutions 21, in which we are taking place, which will showcase and demonstrate what can be feasible and what methods should be deployed in order to help meet the targets. So this is one area where we see at least something can be expected, which is that people recognize also and that solutions already exist and could be scaled out. So this is maybe not the most important part, because we all know that what we expect is an agreement that would be binding, that would also pave the way to clear reductions and set also boundary conditions for the actions of countries and ultimately cities. But this is more political, and I assume my colleagues here will have also other elements to add to this.
Well, Alex, where would you take this?
Well, with the caveat that I'm not the most qualified person to talk about this either. It's a political question, I think. But one thing that the city conversation has demonstrated is the power of the spirit of cooperation. If you look at C40, for example, there's no law that established that organization. It's it's simply an organization that exists to share information and to cooperate, and that's been very powerful, and that's actually made real change. And I think what you saw in the agreement between Obama and the Chinese president is that maybe there's a new spirit of cooperation, and I think that might be the outcome that we could hope for, that would also be realistic at COP, is that we would actually have people thinking in cooperative terms instead of adversarial terms, and I think that could pave the way for something that would ultimately actually make a difference.
Valerie.
So I wanted to say first that before the COP, there's also a science meeting in Paris at UNESCO in July 2015, which is entitled Our Common Future Under Climate Change. And it will also address progress since IPCC AI5, but also solutions for adaptation and for mitigation. And so for the COP21, what I expect personally, I expect targets. I expect the tools to reach the targets to be discussed. We mentioned carbon tax, we mentioned, cap and trade, and we didn't mention bindings to keep carbon fossils in the underground. And what I also expect is verification. The worst is to have promises, but no means to make sure that the promises are kept. And finally, as a citizen, really not as a climate scientist, I would very much like to see before the COP a list of 20 points. These are the 20 points that are at the moment disputed and there's no agreement. And then we could monitor progress on these 20 points. Have we met 10 at this COP? Therefore, it was a successful cooperation. Have we met 15? Which of them we can report?
Very concrete. I hope you are setting the agenda. Corinne.
Yes, I agree with Valérie, because last COP, we have perhaps 500, 600 pages. It's no sense. It's no sense. We need from 10, 15 points. And very precise engagement on this point. I agree with the point. Engagement legally binding, monitoring and reporting of emissions, price of carbon, to induce a change between form of energy and tax carbon. It's a very good idea, and contribution to the Green Fund, because it's very important for the developing country to have a solution for pay the adaptation. Of the adaptation is the Green Fund. If it's impossible to precise the contribution to the Green Fund, I'm afraid that it's very difficult to find a solution. Adaptation and mitigation go together, and we need from solution for developing countries. And for this reason, agreement between China and states is very important, because China works with the 77. It's the leader of the 77. And if China take a direction, we can think that 77 takes the same direction. But the contribution to the Green Fund is very important.
Mm. Pam, particularly with your viewpoint?
Well, last fall, ICLEI, which is Local Governments for Sustainability, a global consortium, had met in Nantes, France, and came up with a declaration of mayors and subnational governments. And the message bringing to COP21 is that in UN speak, we're known as local authorities, and that these local authorities, again, cities be engaged as government stakeholders in the discussions. And again, asking to that global task force of mayors and local authorities be established so that there would be a more direct relationship and more direct input into what is happening at the COP from cities.
Excellent. Thank you, and thank you for the great question. Other questions from the audience? I think we have time for at least 2 or 3 more. How about right up the aisle there, right on the end? Hi.
Hi, Joyce Dillard. When you attend a water meeting in the state on regional planning, you see really what Los Angeles has, and they have talent compared to other areas. And we're urban and we're not agriculture. But with that, we don't have connectivity, and it's all politics. North versus South, 800-pound gorilla down here. So politics is hard to get away from. There are 2 federal agencies that have come out that want to work with some local issues. FEMA is out here in their National Advisory Committee with their administrator saying, we need to work on building codes. That's very local. You have the Federal Highway Administration, FHWA, just came out with a regulation that isn't set yet, but just finished its comment period, having the metropolitan planning organizations, which is SCAG, work with the local governments on their plans and get the public involved. Where I see a disconnect in this is I don't see politically how you could make the connectivity, yet the will is there with the people. You talk to locals, they want to become involved, they don't want to have buildings on historical landslides, which are coasts here. We have that going on here. It's a problem. Where do we look at outside the politics that we can start having that connectivity? Like I said, the will's there on the people on the ground. The will is there now in at least a couple of federal agencies. You have the California water thinking they can pull it together, which they can't. You have a governor that wants to, but I don't see that missing point, missing person or group.
Thank you. Anyone want to respond? The connections that you're looking for to drive this in collaboration with agencies of the federal government, but coming from below, that may stand alone. If you don't have a response, we'll move on.
Well, certainly at SCAG, the SCAG has a relationship with some of the agencies that's become stronger, such as Federal Highways now in the Los Angeles area has a point person who has actually come to SCAG meetings too. I mean, they've always, no doubt, talked at the staff level, but there's more of a face on that agency. So those kinds of things probably help to enhance the knowledge of the agencies, what they're doing in the discussions. But the public, if you're talking about stakeholder public input into decisions, that always gets to be a bit hard. There's the outreach that's done through websites and information, but how do you, say for SCAG example, how do you reach out to 16 million people on a limited budget? So you do that the best you can through frankly, the member cities. And so at that very local level, how the input there may not be directly into the FHWA regulation, but still how cities view conceptually the kinds of things feeds into it through the regional council. But people who are interested need to be aware, because I think it is something that will never filter down to the average person. They're never going to know what the MPO is doing. No, but through the cities they can. Right, through the cities they can.
Please continue it later. I hope that'll be a great conversation. Alex, did you still want to respond?
No,
we're good? Okay. Let's look toward the back of the room now, where we haven't really picked up anybody, or maybe way over here on the side. Hi, sir.
Dick Platkin, I teach classes in sustainable city planning. My question is about economic growth. At 1%, The global economy will be 3 times larger by the end of the century. At a 2% growth rate, it'll be 5% larger. At a 3% growth rate, it'll be 13 times larger, not percent, times. So how does this affect any models, any mitigation programs, and anything else if you have such significant expansion of the economy, even at low anemic growth rates?
Lots of policy and economic questions. Anyone want to tackle that? Valerie?
Maybe I can just explain that at the global scale, the increase in the economy during the past decades, the increase in population have, of course, led to more use of fossil fuels, but it was partly compensated by 2 things: energy efficiency and decarbonization of the energy until the last decade. And during the last decade, basically because of the increasing rate of coal, we have lost that. And my second comment is the following. You have economical growth, you are lucky, because in Europe and in France at the moment, it's not exactly the case. And so we are making hard efforts, despite minimum economical growth, to invest in mitigation, and it is feasible. But it is easier when you have more investments, more public investments that you can afford with a higher growth.
Daniel.
Maybe 2 comments here. First of all, it's true that the world is changing. Not only there is growth, but there are many, many changes. Even without climate change, we have entered an era where the rate of change is increasing and will be, in any case, greater and greater, because new technologies, information systems bring new ideas, and so we should not imagine that our world will be only dominated by climate change. The second, and the changes brought by climate change. So there might be hope also, because in these other changes, there will be possibilities to be more efficient, to change things. And this is really where I see an element of response. We see that the circular economy, for instance, approaches can change radically, and the way we use our resources. So we obviously, when dealing with climate change, we do not need to think only about climate change, but rethink the economy and the way, the models that we are using. So I'm just taking the example of circular economy, but it's only one of these examples, and we need to look at different compartments of our economies and how they can cope with all the changes that will occur in the coming decades.
Corinne.
Yes. It seems it's a question of indicators. I know that in California, but in Europe too, we are working on the question of beyond GDP. And we work on the new index of well-being indicators tools. Because when we speak about growth, we omit all the destruction, sickness, violence, and so on. And these indicators permit to integrate the truth, the real life. And it's new, I know that, but I think that it's a good way, these new indicators.
All right. One last question from the audience, and then we will begin to wrap up. There's somebody pointing to someone who has his hand up way over here. Oh, you've got someone there.
Yeah.
Bear with us. If we have time, we'll squeeze in one more. Yes, miss.
Hi, bonjour. My name is Diana, and I work for Build It Green. And what we're doing is we're training real estate agents and contractors to help market transformation for a more resilient climate change economy. And I was wondering if there's any work in Europe similar to that, where we're training real estate agents to be educated about building science to sell and retrofit homes for potential homeowners.
Was everyone able to hear? All right. Yes, Valerie.
I know similar initiatives, and in Europe, for instance, tools have been developed to convey the idea of what will be climate change for architects, for real estate managers. The analogy that was given is, in 50 years from now, without mitigation, the climate of Paris will be like the climate we have in the southeast of France. But in 80 years from now, it will be like the climate we have in Spain or, in South Italy. And this gives an idea to architects, to real estate agents, that they have to be inspired by historical lessons from centuries of adaptation to a different climate. And this is a very powerful image, for them to get involved in thinking differently. Today, houses that have an exposure to the south have more value on the market. But in 50 years from now, it will not be the case. It will be those that are best adapted for facing heat waves and are facing north. So this effort is also being made and trying to find, analogs or images that can convey this concept of a changing climate to people from the real estate background.
Fascinating. If we can, did anyone else want to respond quickly? Otherwise, we'll go on to this last question. Let's do that. Can we, the microphone, way up here in the front. I'm sorry to pull that away from you, but the gentleman up here has been waiting a long time. Hi, sir. Quick question.
Hi, quick question. Thank you very much. My name is Romel Pasquale. I'm with LADWP, and I also was the former deputy mayor of Los Angeles. And this is the other to our friends from France. Thank you for talking about cities. And I'm just curious, what is your impressions of Los Angeles? Having come to our city, and we love our city, what do you think is our #1 climate challenge, and what should we be doing about it?
Well, we'll open that up to the American representatives on the panel as well, but who would like to respond first? Valerie?
Thank you. I was also on holiday last summer with my family here, and for me the first challenge is the lack of public transportation.
We'll save the mayor of Santa Monica for last because she does have transportation, as we said, as one of her passions. Anyone else? Danielle?
Yes, I would first of all support very much what Valerie said. I see also that the context here in California with the drought and water issues is really severe, and so adaptation is also quite important issue. And adaptation needs to be seen in a much broader context, even that it's not just about water, but it's also how your city will manage the resources that it requires, and to manage it in a sustainable way. It's about water, it's about agriculture, it's about energy. So mega cities at the moment are facing these huge challenges, and these challenges, of course, will be even bigger with the climate change. So I would say that this is also an area, at least, that needs to be tackled seriously.
And I only wish that we had more time to talk about such topics as mega cities in the third world, where, it's a very mixed bag, is my understanding. I mean, I've been to Delhi, and I was fascinated to see that they have moved all the tut-tuts there, which are innumerable, the little vehicles that run all over the city and take goods and produce and people everywhere in town, are all converted to propane, whereas they used to be diesel or gasoline. So there is progress. Corinne, did you want to give your impression of Los Angeles?
It's very difficult. I arrived yesterday. I will be not honest if I have an opinion. I see the importance of the difficulties because it's a big city with a lot of problem of water, transportation, so what. But you have an imagination and capacity to change, to invent, that it seems to me very important. But I cannot go more because it's impossible for me.
Well, thank you for those kind comments. Alex?
Well, I think I can only just add a little bit of shading to what's been said already. I mean, I certainly agree that water is a huge challenge here, and we don't really make very good use of the water we have in general, so that has to be changed. And I think also that on the public transportation side, that's hugely important. But there are other issues related to that. For example, a lot of the density that has been built in Los Angeles is the wrong kind of density. It's if you go down Wilshire Boulevard here, it's just big residential buildings with 5 or 6 floors of parking at the bottom, and you can't actually walk around those neighborhoods. There's nothing to walk to. So it has to be the right kind of density. Complete streets has been mentioned. You have to build neighborhoods that are walkable. Even if we did have our dream public transit network, it still wouldn't get you all the way. You need to have mobility through bicycling. I think car sharing is another thing that has come up as part of the solution to get us to the point where we are more sustainable. So I think the mobility challenge has to be addressed very, very holistically. It's not just public transportation.
Pam, anything to add?
Well, it's a huge region. If you wanted to go from Santa Monica to, say, Riverside, that's 80 miles in kilometers. I can't remember. That would be, what? Over 100 kilometers away. And right now, if you wanted to do that by car, it would take you about 1 hour and 20 minutes. So we're never going to be able to connect every point in Southern California to each other via transit. But that being said, there are lots of areas that are more compact, that have the density that can be connected. And if you think of the Los Angeles basin area, it's being from Santa Monica, Hollywood, going to downtown Los Angeles, down towards the South Bay, that area is probably about the size of the city of Paris. If you plunk the Paris in with all your arrondissement, it would be that. But, that's not counting the South Bay. So the South Bay would be something else, the gateway cities, San Gabriel. But still, just using that as an example, within that area where there is a fair amount of density, we have a subway that's being expanded. We have light rail that goes from Culver City to downtown Los Angeles, and it will be all the way to Santa Monica in about a year and a half. Santa Monica has we just approved our council starting a bike share program, and that will, Metro also is countywide looking at and getting that going. The South Bay, which is not part of that basin, has car-to-go, car sharing. So we are putting those pieces together. And again, you may always have to find a way to get from Hollywood to Anaheim and to Disneyland. That might be a little more difficult, but within different neighborhoods, within areas, and even those Inland Empire cities, even those Orange County cities, you have a lot of areas where you have that compact development, you have compact downtowns, you can get around by walking. And I just want to add one other thing about the South Bay. So the South Bay, they say we're kind of different. We're not going to be as dense. We're dense, but we're not quite as dense as some of those other areas. We don't have rail transit coming to us in the near future, but we have other ways of getting around. We're looking at using slow-moving vehicles, so small electric vehicles. So how do we do a network of lanes and roads where slow vehicles can move around? So there throughout the region, an electric and high efficiency vehicles can move. So we are looking at a range of solutions, and with smart technology, with the sharing economy, and with the growing transit network in Los Angeles County especially, we have seen great changes. And when you come back to visit us next time, you will see even more options.
And would you please, use your influence, get that blue line extension built up the Gold Line into Pasadena so that I can take it all the way. I hope to see all of you on the Metro. My last question, and it's just for quick responses from the scientists at the other end of the room, all of whom I think have talked about the need for better data, higher resolution data. But what would you want to say to policymakers about their dependence on that data? Are they using it as effectively as it should be? Present company policymakers on this end of the table accepted. Alex?
Well, I guess my response to that would be that it has to be a two-way conversation. I think that scientists aren't famous for their people skills and their communication skills exactly either, or that's not what they're known for, and they're not always good at that. And I think that they're not trained for that either. And so I think the outreach has to go both ways. And so I think scientists have a responsibility to speak out. It's not just policymakers reaching out to scientists. And I think the other thing I would add is that because there are only 24 hours in the day, and we all have our jobs that we have to do. On the science side, it's doing science research. On the policy side, it's being politicians. We need people who work at the interface also, and who are have enough expertise on both sides that they can actually facilitate conversations. And that's an emerging area of expertise, actually. I think you even see people here today who occupy that role. So I think that realistically, we need to create a new kind of a new class of people who work at that interface to actually get the conversation going in a productive way.
Danielle, and then Valerie will give you, our children's author, the final word.
Well, just quickly on this, there are a lot of data, and there will be more and more data will be shared. And I believe that politicians, they don't need necessarily to deal themselves with the data, but ensure that the relevant data are correctly shared in the society, in order to create the value that could be indeed created from this data. This is what we see happening progressively, and I'm sure that in this enabling capacity, politicians have an important role.
Valerie, if you wait, Pam just asked if she could throw in a quick comment.
And I'll just mention again, the City of Santa Monica's Sustainable City Report Card comes out, and it's based on data, various data sets. It's based on rigorous analysis, but what is produced and put out to the public and available on the website and shared with the community is, again, that interface where the information is reduced in a way to a grade, A, B, C, or D, so people can understand that. If they want to dig deeper, they can dig deeper. But if they just need that tip of the iceberg, they get that tip of the iceberg understanding of how we're doing and what the science is saying.
Valerie.
So thinking of the COP21, for instance, the limits of our scientific knowledge are no limits to making decisions for sure. The picture is already quite clear. However, we must also acknowledge that there are paths for improving the way we communicate our science. One example is something, a weather event happen. We have to make sense of that event. What are the natural processes behind that? How the likelihood or the strength of this event has been modified because of man-made climate change. That's something really important. And for the best use of projections, of future risks, there's something that's emerging. It's called climate services. It's something that's, in between the basic research that's being done in the laboratories, in the universities, and the needs by the industry, the insurance industry, for instance, the policymakers. And it's really finding the exact diagnosis that is usable, that makes sense, for managing water, for agriculture, for forestry, for the industry, for risks. And that's a very specific topic for which we need new people to be the key players. So they have to be able to have a dialogue with the scientists and understand the uncertainties, but they also have to understand and transmit the knowledge and the limits of the knowledge to the people who are stakeholders.
Corinne, because you would be the only one left out of this last response, do you have any last comments about this or any other topic?
Perhaps on these topics, I think that it's very important to understand that climate change is a fact. And climato-skepticism is an opinion, not a fact. And I think that it's very important for policy makers, because the mix between both is very dangerous. It's first point. Second point, I think that we have a historical responsibility.
You just keep looking forward.
Excusez-moi. I think that we have a historical responsibility. I'm a grandmother. I think at my little children. And I think that in this room, I am not alone. And if we do nothing, and it is 30 years now that we know the question of climate change, if we do not, if we do nothing now, it could be very difficult to live at the end of the century. And for this reason, we have a historical responsibility. And the first responsibility is for the policymakers, but it's too for all the society. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to all of our excellent panelists. We are so fortunate. We are more than out of time for today's discussion, but fortunately, I don't believe our planet is quite out of time. Let me show you just two of the reasons that I care so much about what we have talked about. They're probably the two best reasons that I have. There are my daughters who are here, Laura and Claire. Where are you? I'm going to embarrass them. There they are, sitting right back there. Thank you for coming, girls. So the fight continues, as it will 1 year from now, when the world gathers in Paris for the 21st Conference of the Parties on Climate Change. Thank you, all of you, for joining us, and thank you for the good that you do in our town, your region, your nation, and the world that all of humanity shares. Fabienne is going to come back up and make a couple of closing announcements for the good of the group. Again, thank you all for being part of this.
So now it is my pleasure to invite you to the Résidence de France for a cocktail lunch hosted by the Consulate General of France, Mr. Axel Cruot, to continue the discussion on these very interesting topics. I would like to remind you that you have the opportunity to leave your car on the campus, to leave it in the parking lot, and to commute to the Résidence de France with a bus that is right in front of the building. See you at the Résidence de France. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Good to meet you.
Good to meet you. Very good. Thank you. I hope it was enough focus on our meeting. That was very interesting. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. It was my great pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. Quite easier.